Hi there. So I'd like to continue with our discussion from the first presentation as to the business case for sustainability. So we went over the 6 prongs, and then I talked at great length about the first one. So I'd like to move on now to the second one. These first 2 facets, if you remember from the first conversation, are really, really important for reticent adopters or folks that are just sort of unsure about whether sustainability is really viable for them. You have to really sell them on something that's going to directly impact their profit and loss statement. So let me move up here. So we're going to move into number 2, which is decreasing operating costs. And think about this, that whenever you cut down any of your input costs, water or materials or energy, or you have less waste to deal with or to absorb at the end of a process or product life cycle, your costs are going to, by nature, go down. So it's a really, really easy concept to sell. So businesses are concerned about the cost and the volatility of things like water and energy. And is there going to be a carbon tax? Is that going to be priced into our raw materials and our energy costs? So anything we can do to decrease those costs is going to be good for us. This picture down here of New Belgium Brewery was the first wind-powered brewery in America, and they give each of their employees, I think it's like after 6 months, get a really nice high-quality mountain bike. So it's just this whole different way of looking at decreasing your costs and rewarding your employees. This kind of fits into 2 of them. So how do you do this tangibly? Like, how does this really work? Well, the first thing you have to do if you're going to decrease your costs is you have to understand what they are. So a baseline assessment is doing like a carbon footprint or a water footprint or a waste footprint and figuring out what exactly it is in your business, how much water or carbon or whatever it is that you're footprinting do you use. So then you can determine, as you move down the road and you implement policies, you can determine if you're impacting that footprint. So the first thing, especially again with the cautious adopter, is capturing low-hanging fruit. So how do I immediately get you savings on your electric bill or on your energy costs? So immediately, if you do something like a retrofit, or you insulate or wrap or make a building envelope more efficient, they're going to see that immediately on their bill, and that generally hooks people. And then you can ask, as you move on down the road, hey, can I take a little piece of that savings and use it for programs that maybe don't return such an immediate cash, have such an immediate cash return, like more upcycling or recycling or spending more time in the lab with biomimicry development. These are all examples of ways to decrease operating costs. Whenever you use less packaging, it's going to cost less. Whenever you video conference rather than send somebody on a plane across the world, it's going to cost less. So these are all examples of ways to tangibly decrease operating costs. Waste is a really big issue. It's back to this cradle to cradle concept. Waste has a cost, and that cost is going to increasingly go up as we lose the ability, as our landfills, as our access to waste disposal sites diminish with population pressures and land usage pressures. We're already seeing this happen. So what about, and you see this in some communities, Bend, Oregon, Long Beach, where recycling is free and waste has a pretty high cost. So re-incentivizing, as we see communities and states re-incentivizing to recycle, upcycle, etc., waste is going to become more expensive. So it becomes more critical for businesses to understand how to decrease and cut down on that cost. We see in a lot of, especially high tech and electronics, where rather than having this tremendous amount of e-waste, why can't we turn our old products, or I'm sorry, our old, why can't we turn our waste into new products, into byproducts? So rather than having metal tailings that you throw away, why can't they be melted down and used for new components? With textiles and felts and things like that, why can't we use those tailings and make a lesser grade byproduct? So ways of thinking about how you can take those traditional waste and actually turn them into revenue sources. And again, this should look pretty familiar. What's the first thing you have to do is conduct a baseline and get a grasp on how much waste you're currently producing. You've done that, I believe, with the greenhouse gas inventory. You saw how we measured waste at the University of Montana. And these are very small impact items, but just, cutting down on paper, easy office recycling. More important and bigger is having purchasing policies that really target low packaging and high reusage potential products, just bringing them into the office. Not about, it's not about, oh gosh, we have all these items in the office that have disposable packaging, and what do we do with them now? It's making the conscious decision what you're purchasing, what you're bringing into your commercial entity. And it's really the same thing in our homes. If we get into a cycle of taking reusable containers, for example, to get our shampoos and our dish soaps and things like that, great. So we're not bringing disposable packaging into our home and then saying, oh gosh, what do we do with it? E-waste policy, very, very important. E-waste is a just a tremendous global problem and issue. Lots of it ends up in East Africa, Central China, with kids processing our e-waste. Okay, same thing with water. How do we cut down on our water? Same issues. Really, water shortages, we're already obviously seeing them in places as critical as California, where 28 million people and one of the world's actually largest bread baskets, largest agricultural producing regions. Water is going to continue in the landscape to be a very, very critical issue. So lots of production processes are finding ways to recycle their gray water, to cut down on the amount of water needed to finish the manufacturing cycle. But if you brew beer or you make Coke, water's a pretty big issue. You can't replace that with another raw material. So water footprinting and being a member of the Water Footprint Network, very, very important. Things to do: identify your water footprint. It's called just that, a water footprint. Using xeriscaping in your commercial landscaping, recycling water and manufacturing processes, finding ways to be water wise, lots and lots of appliances and tools and processes that are now use much less water. So recycling water, buying water restoration certificates, xeriscaping, all sorts of things like that. Okay, in each of these areas, I'm just kind of flying through. They can all be really unpacked if you're interested in any one of them. So point number 3 was tapping into socially responsible investing. And if you remember, that was investors making a conscious choice to take their investment dollars, whether they're small amounts or large amounts, and when they make choices in the stock market, that they reward companies or mutual funds that are employing sustainability techniques. So rewarding companies with high ESG standards. This is a really important acronym. It's companies that have high levels or standards around environmental policies, social policies, and corporate governance. And governance means accountability and tracking tracking the ethical policies, and making sure that you have strong internal audits and that you have reasonable executive compensation, and just tracking who manages and who's accountable for an organization. So companies that overtly acknowledge these three areas, by having a chief sustainability officer, by having a committee on the board of directors that specifically deals with these, with having their product research and development go through environmental vetting. Socially responsible investing says, hey, these companies we're seeing more and more people actively putting their money into these companies because they believe that they're high performing. And I think that I acknowledged in that first slide that I had not updated the number. I think that first slide said 8 trillion. It's $17 trillion, a third of all managed investments in the stock market are now employing environmental, social, and corporate governance standards. So, and this is a huge thing. We're seeing just a really magnanimous amount of wealth transfer. So where parents and grandparents are, intergenerational, they're dying and they're passing on their wealth, intergenerational wealth transfer. And people in your generation and your folks' generation are increasingly more interested in putting their money not in polluting or companies that have a really overt racial or misogynistic or sexual harassment background. They want to make sure that their money is going into companies that are performing at these high social, environmental, and governance levels. And so, I mean, this amount has been up 42% since 2018. And you might say, well, gosh, I'm really interested in that. How do I do that? The Social Investment Forum, here's the website, is just fabulous. It walks you through what to look for, how these companies prove that they're performing to these higher standards. And then there's actually stock market indices that follow the companies that specifically are doing this good work and following these strong corporate cultural patterns. So if you're interested at all in that, we even just with our little 401k, with our stockbroker, we make sure that our companies have been vested and rated through the Social Investment Forum. Point number 4, sustainability brings in better employees and it keeps them longer and they're more high performing. So this West Spring Street is a company, I think they're out of Missouri. And just, it's really fun. This is something most of us can kind of relate to. It's really fun to see that companies that embrace this sort of ethos actually will have their interview questions. Some of their interview questions will be built around like, where would you volunteer? Or where do you like to volunteer? Or if you could set up your own family foundation, what would you fund and why? And what's the hardest sustainability practice you've incorporated into your life, and what's the easiest? So, and if people are like, what's a sustainability practice? They're vetting employees by putting out these questions in an interview environment that encourages them to think about and respond to these areas. So how does this address an organization's business concerns? They want high performing employees. They want lower turnover. They want them aligned with their goals. So if I'm a sustainable organization, I want to know that my employees understand that basic model. And we're seeing now, I think I talked about this in the first tape, we're seeing that there's some long-term studies now about corporations and organizations that embrace sustainability are that the quality of the talent and the longevity of the employees is enhanced as compared to companies that don't have this in place. So how do you do this? Again, interview. This is really cool, a cool idea. You don't see it a lot. I think we're going to maybe see it more as we move into the future and climate change challenges accelerate and water challenges accelerate. But it's tying compensation with achieving sustainability initiatives. So traditionally, executives, particularly mid-level managers, salespeople, their compensation is tied to hitting a profit target or a sales target or a profit margin ratio target or something like that. And that's great. I mean, a company can't exist in the long term if they're not profitable, but also bringing in, like, have you decreased our carbon footprint by 10%? Well, that buys you a bonus. Have you decreased your water footprint by 15%? That buys you a bonus. Have you increased the BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color composition on your executive management team? Well, that buys you a bonus. So there's sustainability targets, and then the administrator or manager's compensation is tied to achieving those sustainability targets. So this is I think a really interesting area. I've always been interested in human resources and how they tangibly impact an organization. So these are just some examples. Shorebank, the big Chicago financial institution, who would they want to volunteer for? Patagonia has this fund called 1% for the Earth, where the corporation puts 1% of all their gross revenues into a fund, and then they ask the employees to vote on at the end of the year where and how to distribute that 1%. So the fifth point in the case for sustainability is called risk mitigation. And this is an area that I think I talked about before. Anything that a company is exposed to, it might be, it might be natural disasters like hurricanes or fire or, earthquakes or something like that. So risk can be there. Risk can be from competition. Risk can be from volatility in the market. Risk can be from liability, like, oh my gosh, if an employee gets hurt or if my product causes someone to be sick. I mean, there's just really a wide array of areas where an organization has risk. And obviously risk mitigation is lessening your exposure to any of those items I just listed. So how does sustainability help with risk mitigation? Well, on lots and lots of levels. So back to the carbon footprinting and the water footprinting, more and more shareholders are wanting to see that companies have water action plans. That's a WAP, or carbon action plans. That's a CAP. So sophisticated shareholders, I mean, not probably you or me sitting at home, but big financial investors, they know that companies that are going to succeed in the future have taken the time to put together the teams to analyze their exposure to a carbon constrained environment or to a potentially water constrained environment. And they want to see the plans as to how they're going to decrease this exposure. They also are looking to see parts of the corporate budget allocated to risk mitigation through green initiatives. So it's not enough to just talk about how you're going to look at renewable energy or decrease packaging with your products, or make sure that you're paying living wage to all your employees. They want to see that a portion of the budget is allocated to making these things happen. So, and there's, I won't go too far into this, but this investor network on climate risk, this is a group of very, very high net worth investment teams that are pressuring Congress and pressuring the president and pressuring policymakers to put a price on carbon, to require reporting on energy usage and carbon footprinting for companies that are publicly traded. So, I mean, this has been happening for a long time. It's kind of like, you know, turning the proverbial ship in the ocean. It's a very, very slow process. It's not going to happen on a dime. But the good news is, not good news, but as climate change chaos continues to accelerate, these investors are having more pressure, or are able to have more pressure on the policymakers. Reducing toxins, obviously, anytime you have toxins, that is going to expose you to risk. You know, clear concerns is, you know, human health, liability, etc. What sorts of things are companies doing? Building green buildings. LEED certified buildings. LEED is, the acronym is LEED. Missoula College, actually, where I work, is a they're gold or platinum. Leadership in environmental and energy design. So it's a series of tests or a series of modules that you look at to determine how you're going to construct a building. Are you using recycled materials? Are you water wise? Are you using renewable energy? What are you doing with any of the waste from the job site? All those sorts of things. And one of the things that's an impact of building green buildings is you use low VOC, volatile organic compound products, like low VOC paints, low VOC carpets, and it makes your indoor air quality much, much higher, and reduces toxins in the workplace. Green cleaning supplies, you know, how are you disposing of any toxic materials you might have on your job site? So these are just some of the examples of how companies are dealing with this area. Nike, this has been a while now, has removed all the PVCs from their shoes. They're using water for their final manufacturing, adhesive processes rather than toxic solvents. Seventh generation is making sure that all their suppliers also are toxin free. So this has been a big push the last 10, 15 years. And the natural step, we looked at that the first chapter, that's very, very centered on toxin reduction. And then the last point is reducing the cost of capital. The cost of capital refers to when an organization needs to raise money, they can either borrow it or they can go out and get investors to invest in it. So if you borrow it, that's called debt, and you usually issue bonds. If you go out and raise money from investors, you sell stock to shareholders. And there's a price associated with each of those sources of capital. So if you borrow it, you pay an interest rate. If you issue stock, you're going to have to pay dividends on them at some point. So those are the costs associated with each of those capital pools. And what we're seeing is that investors and creditors are becoming more sophisticated and rewarding companies that have sustainability policies and those high environmental, social, and governance standards. They're rewarding them in the capital markets by decreasing the amount of interest they charge them on bonds, or giving them a higher price for their stock in the stock market. So this is called capital deployment. There's new capital deployment models that reward companies that are engaging in these activities and penalize companies that aren't. So how do you show these creditors or investors? Well, you show them an environmental management plan, and that's going to decrease the cost of your equity. And the reason is that these investors and creditors see that sustainability companies are all these things we just talked about. They're efficient because they've cut their operating costs. They have better balance sheets, healthier assets, better employees, less turnover, all sorts of tax credits for the utilization of electric vehicle fleets and renewable energy. So it's really looking like, and this doesn't impact like your small little local, grocer or bakery or anything. These are for large organizations. But again, for businesses in general to go green, you have to impact, or you have to see shifts in all kinds of organizations, small, mid, and large sized. So this primarily pertains to large. So we've talked about the 6 primary points, right? And you definitely, that's like the core takeaway from this class. So my hope is that you can really regurgitate, enhancing revenue, decreasing operating costs, mitigating risk, enhancing employee retention, increased investment in socially responsible investing, and improved cost of capital. So the last couple slides are just finishing up talking about when we talk about sustainability in a business. I think lots of times it's really easy to talk about the environmental piece, right? But not as easy to talk about the social piece. What precisely can we do to enhance the social justice component of sustainability? So I did want to talk about that a little bit. This has to do with human rights. It has to do with diversity and inclusion. It has to do with really making sure that you understand your supply chain. So where do all the raw materials that I put into my product come from? How are they harvested? How are they moved? Who are the people that work on these products or sub-assemblies? How are they compensated? How are they treated? Is everybody complying with the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights? So it's really big picture stuff. So the business concerns, again, prosperity of the communities you operate in, the health of your employees, the integrity of your supply chain, all very, very important. So what kinds of things do you do? Well, this gets a little trickier because oftentimes supply chains are international. So how do you make sure that your, for example, your manufacturing companies or your manufacturing vendors in, Bangladesh or Bolivia are complying with international labor policies? Well, that involves, hiring third-party verifications or certifiers that go in and verify that your manufacturing plants are compliant with international labor policies. Your human resource policies are targeted towards having a sustainable and green employment commitments. Your purchasing policies, this is huge. So anything I bring into my company, I know that it's designated sweatshop free, or I know that it's certified to be fair trade. Fair trade means that it primarily pertains to things like cocoa, agricultural products, indigo, things that are harvested, that the farmers got a fair price for their product. So making sure that my purchasing policies specify that only those only those kind of certified products can come into my workplace, that your paper products are Forest Stewardship Council certified, that your seafood is Marine Stewardship Council certified, so that you've got these outside agencies that are going in and vetting where you're purchasing your raw materials and stating that they were compliant with international labor standards. So that wraps up the discussion on value creation in a business. I hope this was super helpful. I hope that you're getting excited to choose your organization that you're going to profile, and let me know if you have any questions or comments about this. Thanks for being with me today. Bye.